If you've been watching my channel for any significant length of time, you may remember the video I made about the Caledonian Railway 600 class, published in February 2024. The 600 was a unique 080 tender engine introduced in 1901, but withdrawn by 1930, and more recently, I remembered at least one other Scottish 060 that Caledonia Works have modelled for Train Simulator, and I wanted to share my 2 cents on the 080 in question. This is the 492 class tank engine, or as I like to call her, Chonky McChonkerson. The 492 class is one of the most oddly proportioned tank engines I've ever come across. These things were designed by John F. McIntosh and built at Glasgow St Rollick's Works in 1903 and 1904, with a total build-out of only 6 locomotives. They were designed for heavy shunting, hauling short-distance freight trains or banking other trains up steep inclines, and came equipped with a Westinghouse air pump for hauling the Caledonian Railway's big 30-ton mineral wagons. Despite what their imposing appearance might lead you to believe, the 492s would have only been given a power rating of 4F by the London, Midland and Scottish Railway. All 6 members of the class survived long enough to be inherited by the LMS in 1923, and were renumbered in the 16500 to 16505 range. 3 years later, they were renumbered a second time, for whatever reason, now going in the 16950 to 16955 range. Unfortunately, none of these locomotives survived long enough to see British Railways, as they had all been withdrawn by 1939, with none surviving into preservation. The 492 class was released for Train Simulator in December 2019, as one in a large range of Caledonian engines modelled by Chris Wilson, although what you're looking at now is not the full selection, as I simply don't have them all, and even if I did, I wouldn't be able to fit the whole lot in the yard here at Stranraer. I can't remember when I bought the 492 for myself, or how much I paid for this thing, but regardless, she is still available to buy on CW's website as of mid-September 2025, for a full price of £15, or $34.12 NZD. For the longest time, £15 was the standard price for CW packs, but these days, £20 appears to be the new standard, as seen with engines like the LNER A1-1 Pacific, LMS Fowler 4P, and Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway 7F. Come to think of it, I've just realised that the 492 looks like a bigger version of the 782 class 060 tank, another McIntosh design, but one that predates the 492 by 7 years. The livery selection includes all 4 that these locomotives would have worn in real life, along with one fictional livery. The authentic ones are Caledonian Railway Goods Black, 2 variants of LMS pre-1928 unlined black, with either code C1 or code C3 decals, and 1 variant of LMS post-1928 unlined black, with code C15 decals. I should also mention that you can download a texture patch for the 492 class, with the patch being made by Epic Bernastard and available on the Golden Age Developments website. It says on the website that this patch is a de-bluing of the locomotives, but I have no idea what de-bluing means. For all I know, it could mean any semblance of Eiffel 65 being purged from the locomotives. pre-1928 LMS Crimson Lake wasn't included at initial release, but instead added as a post-release update. As much as I like this livery, I still think it looks odd on such a bulky tank engine, but regardless, there's a little detail I noticed on all the liveries included in this pack, that being the tiny bit of grime trickling down the water tank just below the filler cap. Another thing I noticed was that, similar to the 600 class, the 492 also has odd-looking wheel spacing, but only between the first and second axles this time. Incidentally, the wheels on the second axle were flangeless, thus making it easier for the locomotive to negotiate tight curves, but I still wouldn't recommend using her as a dock shunter. Chonky McChonkerson makes use of SimNation's Locomotion 1.2 scripting, so she had good features for something released as far back as 2019, but she doesn't have the more advanced features that you'd see on newer CW products with Locomotion 2.0. Case in point, the London and South Western Railway T14 class, released in November 2023. As for what the big 080 tank does have, this includes, but is not limited to, Performance Mode, which improves the frame rates and therefore makes it a bit easier for people with less powerful computers, along with numerous cab camera views, a fully detailed boiler backhead and cab, 3D firebox, dynamic smoke particles, fully animated valve gear inside the frames, although this is a bit hard to see, and fire intensity synchronized with the exhaust beat. As for the sounds, these were recorded from the preserved 044 tank number 419 and 060 tender engine number 828, according to the products listing on CW's website. So the 492 has a very similar sound set to the other extinct Caledonian engines that we've got in TS. Given the lack of 492s in preservation, I think using sounds from 419 and 828 is an acceptable compromise. The 492 class does not come with any scenarios or extra rolling stock, although she does have quick-drive consists. These require 1 pack from Steam and 4 packs from CW's website, and I'll include links to the requirements in the description. But if, like me, you prefer not to use quick-drive, you can set up your own scenario in either free roam or standard modes, if you know how to do so. I forget why CW products generally don't include scenarios these days, so if Mr. Wilson is watching, he's welcome to remind me in the comments. And now for some random observations that I made while inspecting the 492 class. The cabside doors and fireman's shovel are not animated, although Mr. Wilson has explained the lack of animation in a comment on my LNER F8 video. The reverser is notched instead of smooth, and this engine doesn't have a functioning reverser lock. It looks like there is no water in the gauge glasses, and I was hearing the sound of a shovel in the external view, but not in the cab view for some reason. Instead of the traditional endurance test from Castle Douglas to Newton Stewart, I thought about doing a speed test with the 492 class, using the Dumfries to Gretna Green section of Western Lines of Scotland, which runs through much flatter terrain and has less curves than the line west of Castle Douglas. Curiously, we were tasked with delivering 2 howitzer railguns to pannier tank 9629 and his accomplice, thus enabling these two to demand money from the 1400 once again. According to the manual, the ideal fire mass for this locomotive is between 800 and 900 pounds on the F5 heads-up display, or 60 to 65% on the F4 heads-up display, while the water level should be kept at between 80 and 90%, as marked on the F4 HUD. The normal working boiler pressure is 175 pounds per square inch, and if you maintain the coal and water at the right levels, this locomotive will steam reasonably well. The 492 class was never intended for express passenger trains, so I went into this not expecting her to have a particularly high top speed. In the end, I couldn't get her to go any faster than 48.5 miles per hour, with that speed being reached around 0.2 miles east of Rax. For reference, Rax is the first station east of Dumfries. While we did make it to Gretna Green in the end, the pannier tank and 2F dock tank were not happy, because the 1400 had already managed to get away while the robbers were still unarmed. I think the shed staff at Dumfries should have assigned the speedy 721 class 440, also known as Dun Alastair, to the howitzer run, instead of that slower tank engine. Considering the sheer amount of Caledonian Railway locomotives, coaches and wagons we've got in Train Simulator, it's a pity that there aren't any pre-grouping era routes for this lot to run on, be they real or fictional routes. At least we have plenty of Caledonian stock on hand in case a suitable route is ever made, but for now, I'll continue to use the 492 class on the existing Scottish routes in the game, such as the Crabenmore branch and Western Lines of Scotland, or whatever other UK routes I feel like using, regardless of whether or not it makes sense. In this case, we're on Dorset Coast by Golden Age developments. In any case, I still like pottering about with the 492 class from time to time, and it's nice to see such an obscure locomotive in Train Simulator. But the skills of CW and Sim Nation have come a long way in the 6 years since this engine was released, so it would be nice to see her get a whole new model, thus getting the same update as the one-off 422 number 123 and the 812 class 060. For now, I think the chonky 080 tank engine deserves a 7 out of 10, and if you've stuck around to the end of the video, you win the opportunity to referee a boxing match between a British-built bus and the second Pearl Jam album. It's the Optare Versa versus Versus,